Welcome to the PLC Professor's Workshop. This is where we sort out all of our lab projects. However, today what we're going to do is talk about Connected Components Workbench release or version 13. Just came out in the last week or so. We're not going to cover everything. There's also some improvements for Panel View 800, but we're going to just discuss the Micro 800 and some of the improvements. So let's jump in and have a look at some of these. What we're going to do is compare some screenshots from version 12 with version 13. This is version 12. This is version 13. And you'll notice there's really nothing really to discern, at least at this level, except you might notice that there are a couple grayed out buttons here in the online area that you don't see up here, but we'll get to those later. Right now we're not concerned about those. Okay, the first menu to look at is where we're creating a new project. The new one has something additional called a document generator. Now, the document generator or print was in another location in version 12, but you see now it's in the file menu, and we'll show you what it looks like, and it is completely different. So that's the main change in the first menu, is the document generator. Okay, if you're going to create a new project, it's going to look the same. In other words, the catalog selections are the same. Nothing's really changed there. And if you're expecting to be able to select version 13 for the controller, that's not going to happen. You're going to be disappointed. There are no release or firmware 13 that came with version 13 like there was with 12. Remember, with 12, the big thing was the simulator that you see down at the bottom of the list for the Micro 850. So that was a change going from 11 to 12, but not from 12 to 13. So that's one thing you'll notice is different. You won't get a 13 pop up. The document generator is quite a bit different, and we're going to discuss that at some length. Now, this document generator, this menu that comes up, was for a bare bones Micro 850 simulator project, not a project that had any real meat to it. Now here's one that has some real meat to it. This is a project that we did in part 2 of the lab project manual, and there's a number of programs. So you can actually select programs, variables, ASCII text. Now ASCII text is not what you think it's going to be, but it is actually something pretty cool. So you can turn it on and off. You don't have to print all the programs. I have everything selected. Let's look at the bare bones first, and I'm going to go to the new feature, Document Generator. But click on that, and it comes up, and it gives me kind of a configuration. I've got everything selected, and I can't select programs because there are no programs. Now, just to demonstrate that, I'm going to cancel, and I'm going to go over and add a program. Now I'm going to go back and select Document Generator, and see now I've got programs. And if I generate a document, there's really not much there to generate because there's nothing in the program. There's a few variables that are global, and that's it. Now we could select everything. Okay, but we're still not going to get much when we generate the report. And I'm going to go ahead and generate it anyway. And I don't know if you can see this. I'll drag this up. And we'll save it as a Word document, Micro 850. Do you want to open the generated file? Yes. And you can see that you've got a table of contents. And you've got a lot of configuration, I/O. So that's the entirety of it, though, because there's no, see, it shows rung 1, diagram, programs, program 1. There's just nothing there. So let's get rid of that, cancel this, and let's bring up a different one. Now, this is a program with a number of things in different programs, as you can see over here. Now, I'm going to click on Sequence. So this is in View. Now I'm going to do Document Generator. And I'm going to unblock that and then check it so everything is selected. Okay, now remember, we're looking at sequence. So we'll generate the document We'll save it as sequence. I already did it once, that's why it was already in there, so I'm just overwriting. You want to open the generated file. Now we're in Microsoft Word, and you can see we have something really interesting. I think that you're going to enjoy, and that is, look at each of these rungs. It's actually showing the ASCII rung, which looks more like structured text, but the program is stored in this form: XIC input 0, pulse, timer pulse with the tag name, the preset, and then OTE, this instruction. So it's actually quite interesting that you can put the ASCII in there, but notice that it ends with rung 15, or the end rung, if you want to call it that, rung 14 of sequence. Now let's close this down, cancel this, and now let's go pick the controller itself, Micro 850. Not a program, but the actual Micro 850 page. Now let's go do a document generation. Now look what we got. And we'll uncheck that, check it, so everything's checked. Now see, before it only showed sequence. Now it's showing all of these program files. So we'll generate. Of course, this is going to be a much larger file, so I'm going to make that sequence plus, just so it's got a different name and it doesn't overwrite the other one. You can see it takes quite a while longer to generate the file. Now we're going to open it. So you got a bigger table of contents because you have more programs. So when we scroll down, you see some of the same information, global variables, all the global variables, a lot of them. And here's rung 1 of the buffered inputs. So here you can see in this rung that I'm checking the condition of, we'll just say input 1, and I'm saving it in IN01. So we're buffering inputs. I'm going to scroll down faster. Now we're actually into the first program that has some real content in it. You can see the logic there. And we'll just keep going down. So you can see, if you're going to generate a document, I don't know if they intended this on purpose, but what you have selected here, well, that makes sense, is going to determine how much of a document you get. So that's the new feature that they call, I'm going to cancel this, it's Document Generator. You didn't have this before in version 12. This is new in version 13. This is version 12. This is version 13. And of course you can't see any real differences except right here in the, if you want to call it the online toolbar, you see a couple additional buttons. This would be the verify. This is going to allow you to verify part of the project rather than doing a complete build. The button right next to it, the build button. So you no longer have to do a complete build. You can verify just the program that you're working on. And then this is the clean button. If you have issues building the application, you can use the clean button to clean it up and then do it again. Because remember, this is a partial build and that's a complete build. And if you do partial builds and you have problems, you do a clean and then you do a complete build. Just keep that in mind. The only other thing I noticed was they changed the symbols on the data types. If you look at the version 12 to the left, it looks like a blue cylinder with a couple symbols on it, and this is a completely different symbol. What it signifies, I don't know. I just noticed that it was different. Okay, the edit tools is pretty much identical to version 12. However, I will say that replace is not functional yet, and I don't know why it's in the menu, but they're saying that the find feature is a little bit better than version 12, but version 13 doesn't support replace. Now that may change as they do upgrades to version 13 between now and when they release 14. Okay, the view window does not look a whole lot different, except that with version 13 you have find results, controller organizer. And we're not going to discuss controller organizer right now, but we will here in a minute. Controller organizer, that's more reminiscent of Logix 5000 than it is CCW. But it's basically the same thing. With version 13, you have another tab down at the bottom that says controller organizer. In 12, you don't have either one of those tabs, but you have the project organizer, which is what you see above there. And you see the programs, micro 50, global variables, user-defined function blocks, user-defined functions, and data types. But now you've got controller organizer, and if you click on that, you get a whole different view of the, if you want to call it the project. But notice you have a new category, tasks. If you're not familiar with this, and of course if you do 5000, RS Logix 5000, Studio 5000, Logix Designer, then you're familiar with tasks. Tasks include programs. You can have multiple tasks, and each task can have multiple programs. Now, this is not evolved yet to the point that 5000 allows you to have quite a few tasks, as in 32 different tasks, and each task can have up to 100 programs. That's not the case here. But you can create a new task. And notice a completely different look between the project organizer and the controller organizer. Now you can switch back and forth between the two. So new task, if you click on that, you have three choices for the new task: user fault routine, event interrupt routine, and selectable timed interrupt routine. And each of these gives you the choice of structured text, ladder diagram, or function block diagram for the programs in these other tasks. So this is completely new in version 13. I'm not going to elaborate on any of this. I'm pointing out that it's there and you need to explore it on your own. But I see a lot of advantages to this. Now this is how the controller variables looked in version 12. And you notice that in the project organizer or controller organizer, that controller tags used to be down under assets. Notice that I added, by the way, 3 new tasks, and see how they show up, and notice that each one of them for its program has a different symbol. That's because for the UFR I made it a ladder diagram for the program. For the event task I made it a function block diagram, and then for the selectable timed interrupt, I made it structured text. Notice they all have their own local variables. But you notice the icons are different than the programs up above under the main task. One thing I want you to notice about the main task, and if you're familiar with 5000, this isn't new to you, but notice the clockwise swirly next to main task. That means that it is the continuous task, meaning that it is the code tries to run continuously and is only interrupted by these other possible tasks that we added and we showed you. So anyway, if you double click on controller variables, this is what you would have seen in version 12. You should recognize it, but in version 13, this is what it looks like now. And my vote's out on whether or not I like it. However, I do notice it has a filter. So the data is still the same: name, alias, data type, dimension, project value, initial value, comment, and string size. The same stuff, it's all there. But now you also have a filter, so you can filter what tags or variables are displayed by name, data type, comment, and alias. So this is new. This is a completely different display, but it's the same data. This is what it looks like online. And again, I'm not saying I like it or dislike it. I'm going to have to get used to it. I have the simulator running, and I turned on input 0, so you can see down below a blue check mark, or actually a white check mark on blue, for logical value. Now, under physical value, for both output 5, which you can see is on, and input 0, the reason that it's somewhat grayed out is because this is a simulator. There is no true physical value with a simulator. In other words, there's no screw terminals. that actually have a voltage on them. So the physical value is simulated, and that's why this appears as it does, with kind of grayed out with a white check mark. Okay, the device for 12 had the document generator there instead of in the other menu like it is in 13. So this is 12. Okay, and remember, we already explained the document generator, so I just wanted to point this out, that it's no longer under device. Okay, this is the device menu for 13, and you can see that there is one new button, and that's clean. So remember that you can do a verify, which is not shown here, and that's a partial build. And if you get errors, you can clean and then do a complete build. So that's version 12 on the left, version 13 on the right. So clean is one of the new buttons in version 13. Remember, there's no mystery there. It simply cleans up the build process, and then you're going to have to do a complete build. So once you get errors or issues with a partial build, you're going to have to do a clean, and then you're going to have to do a complete build. Okay, tools is pretty much the same, but there's one new addition, and that's product lifecycle info update. And product lifecycle is something new in version 13. I'm not going to go into the details. I have really no interest in it from a practical standpoint, but this is where you can update the product lifecycle info if you need to. Other than that, you can see that it's identical. Okay, window pretty much looks the same except for the feature float all. I don't remember seeing that in 12, and I'm not sure that isn't context sensitive, meaning that if I had opened up the window menu on the left, which is version 12, if I would have opened it up under other circumstances, would it also have shown float all? I don't think so, because I think it would have been grayed out if it was a possibility in some cases, but not in the context of whatever was open in version 12. But in version 13, you have a float all. That means you can take all of the elements of the window, you can float them individually, or you can float them all. And then the help file is also slightly different, and the only thing new that I see in version 12, there was add and remove help content. I don't see that in 13, but 13 has PowerFlex drives and trend. So you can open up help files for PowerFlex drives and for the trends. The main ribbon or toolbar for 12 is as you see it there. This is for 13. And the only real difference that I see is, I mean, if you look real close, maybe you can see something else, but I couldn't see any difference other than the online toolbar. You see where it says disconnected, there's two more buttons now. There's verify and clean buttons. Now here's something to consider, and that is mode change select, or let's back up here a second. Mode change, that's where if you want to do online editing, there's a new form of mode change that's the light version, and it's supposed to be quicker. But in order for it to work, you have to uncheck that yes for download source. In other words, if you are going to download the source code, that's going to take longer. So if you uncheck that yes box and leave it and make it no, then whenever you do a download, you don't download the source code. However, that means that you can't upload the source code either. So personally, I'm going to stay away from mode change light. Even though it might give you a faster download, I wouldn't want to give up being able to upload the source code when I want to do an upload just so I can have a faster download. Last but not least, and this is probably the best one for me, is one thing that annoyed me in the earlier versions was that if I created a dent, I could not address the individual bits. Rockwell had a workaround. They had a user-defined function block that allowed you to massage a dent or an integer and then be able to access or address the individual bits. So you're probably looking at this and thinking, well, not a big deal. Well, the example I'm showing you here is typically if I were going to annotate steps in a sequence, I would create a dent called step, and then I would use step 0.0, the first bit, for step 0, step 1, step 2, 3, 4, and so on, all the way up to 31. You could not do that in version 12. You can do that in version 13. And notice that it will show you the value of that bit, and you can also specify an initial value. In other words, when you download the project, if you want some of those bits to already have an initial value of 1, you can check those boxes. So that's it for Connected Components Workbench version 13. The lectures that we have on YouTube are free. We also have some lectures by subscription on Vimeo. Some of the newer video discussions that we've posted will eventually end up as a subscription on Vimeo. So enjoy them while they're free on YouTube. The project manual for 500, RSLogix 500, MicroStarter Lite, typically using a MicroLogix controller, is this orange and black manual available at the PLC University website. And it has a set of lectures on Vimeo that support it, and some of them are free on YouTube. And then we have a set of RSLogix Studio 5000, Logix Designer, and it's divided up into 2 volumes, Fundamental Programming and Programming Examples, broken into 2 sections to make it easier to handle physically, 2 separate spiral bindings. And then our Connected Components Workbench with Micro 800, Part 1 and Part 2, out with the 3rd edition now, and it's gotten quite hefty and approaching 600 pages, so it's gotten to be quite a handful. I think we're going to come up with a Part 3, 3rd edition. These manuals are available at PLC University, and the lab discussion lectures, some of them are free on YouTube and others by subscription on Vimeo. Have a good day.